What's up, guys? It's your boy, the Essential John L. Crossfire, aka The Real Main Event, aka The Rogue Soldier, and today you're about to learn firsthand just what it's like to be caught in the crossfire. But above all else, prepare yourself, because in this very moment, today, right now, you are about to be caught in conversation. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 37 of Caught in Conversation. Who would have thought that my attention span honestly would have lasted this long? As always, of course, I am the Essential John L. Crossfire, and we have all the wrestling this week. All the wrestling! And I thoroughly enjoyed pretty much all of it. There was a few little things, here and there that could have been better, but honestly, solid cards all around, top to bottom. I won't waste too much time rambling on here as I usually do in the intro, just because there is a fair bit to get to, but I am actually recording this episode a week early in advance, at the same time that I'm editing together what will now be last week's episode by the time you guys hear that, which of course was mine and Mrs. Crossfire's Royal Rumble watch-along. And tomorrow, as I record this, I will be off to Melbourne for Deathmatch Down Under, DMDU's first anniversary show. I will actually be doing a review of that show, but I will be waiting until it is up on IWTV, so both myself and potentially Mrs. Crossfire, at the moment it looks like she will be on board, but it all depends on life and work and whatever else. But I will be doing a review of that once it is on IWTV, because I want to kind of compare both the live experience and, the recorded version of it on TV as I go through it as well when I watch it back. Hopefully nothing too crazy does happen between now and the time this episode drops, because otherwise I won't get a chance to cover it. But at the same time, it's life. Shit happens. My corneal transplant, which was meant to be on the 8th of February, has unfortunately been postponed until May. No solid date has been given to me just yet, but that's why I'm recording this early, because I did have, I actually managed to have all my ducks lined up, all my ducks in a row, and I managed to have time set aside for this episode that it was up and running in case I was too doped out on pain meds and whatever else to put this out from the surgery. But nonetheless, again, shit happens, it's life. Could still be a lot worse. I'm grateful for what I have, 100%. That'll always be the case. But let's just get straight into it. Song of the week this week is I Miss the Misery by Halocene. This is actually a cover of a Hailstorm song, of course. Lizzie Hale, an absolute powerhouse in the rock genre. And the original's pretty freaking awesome as well, but I've just been vibing the absolute hell out of this song the last couple of weeks. And as always, I always say it's a banger, but it really is. Go check out Halocene if you guys haven't heard of them. Freaking amazing rock band. They do some amazing covers of some well-known songs and some obscure songs as well. They've got some pretty good originals out there as well that are pretty dope. But the song of the week this week is I Miss the Misery by Halocene. Halocene, that's Haloscene. I'm not sure if it's Halocene or Halocene, because people say it differently due to accents, but absolute banger. But with that being said, let's just jump straight into the highlights of the shows that I'll be covering this week. The first of which is Terminus Wrestling, the brand new promotion owned by current Ring of Honor World Champion, the Octopus, Jonathan Gresham. But the highlights from this Terminus show are, and first and foremost, I absolutely love the rulebook here for the matches in Terminus. A lot of people do feel like they're a little bit too gimmicky, and I can honestly see that, and that's fine. Everyone likes what they like. It's not everyone's cup of tea. That's fine. I personally, as a huge, proponent of the pure rules over in Ring of Honor, I love these because it's almost like an extension or a modification of those rules, but it just applies to pretty much any and all matches here in the realm of Terminus. I'll quickly run through the rules of Terminus for you guys, just because I feel like it's a little cool tidbit, a little bit of understanding. But all matches must be won by pin, submission, knockout, or disqualification, unless an otherwise agreed upon stipulation is in place. Singles matches have a 15-minute time limit. The same goes for tag and multi-person matches. So basically any standard match is 15 minutes. All championship matches are 20 minutes. Again, unless, of course, previously agreed upon. If there are no winners, a 90-second overtime occurs. If a winner is still not determined, this results in a draw. That, of course, means that if there is a time limit draw, we will go into overtime. A disqualification will occur if a wrestler earns 2 technical fouls or uses a foreign object, or if there is outside interference. Technical fouls will occur when an opponent is thrown over the top rope. I personally love this rule. If/when I ever get to run my own shows, I will make a point that if over the top rope occurs, that will be an instant disqualification because I love old school wrestling. There is a 10-second top rope count, so if you're standing on the top rope for longer than 10 seconds, you will be disqualified, which is an interesting little throwback, in a way, to the olden days, because, of course, back in the day, if you came off the top rope, that was an instant disqualification. We have a 5 count for rope and corner breaks. Intentional physical contact with the referee will constitute as a technical foul. Intentional low blows, which is interesting, because usually a low blow is a complete automatic disqualification, but in the realm of Terminus, you get 2 low blows. So, I mean, you want to kick a guy in the dick, and then you can get a cheap win. You just get admonished. You won't actually be disqualified. So that's an interesting little tidbit there within the realm of Terminus. Intentional eye gouges will also be a technical foul. That's usually, the standard. Fish hooking, intentional hair pulling, spitting, closed fist punches, a 5-second count out, which is very interesting. Any weapon usage, and this is the big one here, the final rule, any weapon usage will result in a disqualification and expulsion from the Terminus promotion. That's a pretty big one, and I'm hoping this could lead to a potential angle later on in these shows if it does come to fruition, like someone hits a chair, uses some brass knucks, whatever, gets fired, could possibly open up for, maybe some sort of invasion type angle down the line. But those are the rules of Terminus. I hope I did them justice reading through them. But the highlights from the very first Terminus show, titled Terminus, All Roads Lead Here, are as follows. We started with a little bit of technical issues when the backstage interviewers were trying to go through the card on the pre-show, which was a shame because they had Zicky Dice come in at the beginning, and he is a very super entertaining guy, in my opinion, and you basically didn't get to hear of anything of what Zicky Dice had to say to the interviewers, and then they had Mr. Hughes and Matt Taven come in, respectively, and again, so many technical issues, you didn't hear almost a word of what they say, and as a huge Matt Taven mark, that disappointed me a little bit. They had the "it's still real to me, damn it" guy come in, and again, didn't hear what he said, so I ended up just fast-forwarding through the entire pre-show. They had a couple more guests, but you couldn't hear almost any of the half-an-hour pre-show before that. But you know what? It's their first show, live TV, stuff happens. But when we did get to the actual card, though, the production picked up, and it was absolutely beautiful. We had a nice little video package quickly running through the card for the show. We had a little bit of trouble in the early goings hearing the ring announcer, but it was fixed very quickly. The commentary team, however, had very nice, crisp audio coming through the entire time. We had Lenny Leonard and Dave Prazak, an absolutely brilliant combination there for commentary. And I'm also aware of the irony behind talking about, technical difficulties and crisp audio when this is obviously far from a professional podcast, but I'm allowed to observe, right? I'm not shitting on them for being in that situation. I was just observing that, unfortunately, the pre-show wasn't watchable for me, at least in the slightest. I pretty much fast-forwarded, about halfway of it. And again, I'm aware of the irony as I'm tripping all over my words. I'm talking about technical difficulties and crisp audio and yada, yada, yada. But yeah, it is what it is. We kicked off the show. The very first match to take place in a Terminus ring was Lee Moriarty versus Josh Woods. I was super excited for this because Josh Woods, super talented wrestler. Of course, he was actually the very last ever Ring of Honor Pure Rules champion. They have actually announced that once again, unfortunately, the Pure Rules Championship will be made defunct for a second time now when Ring of Honor does relaunch in April. And of course, Lee Moriarty, very big name on the indies, a former IWTV Internet champion. But we had a beautiful display of technical wrestling with Lee Moriarty and Josh Woods. And of course, I don't think anyone would expect anything less when you look at the two competitors in this match. It definitely set the tone for what is to come in Terminus in the future. And Lee Moriarty picked up an impressive win to kick it off. The second match, we had a four corners match with a four-way dance rules, meaning that four corners, obviously there's two men legal at a time. Anyone can tag out to anyone else. But you have eliminations like a four-way dance, which is intriguing to me because you still have a 15-minute time limit. So what happens if only one person is eliminated? Does that mean that the person that scored that elimination gets the automatic victory? Is it still a draw? Do we go to judges? But this match was contested between Daniel Garcia, JDX, Invictus Cash, and Adam Priest. To be honest, Daniel Garcia was the only name I was familiar with in this match. They actually added the clock to the screen for this match, which I loved. It was actually up for every match following this. For some reason, it wasn't in the first match. But yeah, the clock was added in the second match here, which I always appreciate. There was a little bit of confusion in the first elimination where JDX was eliminated. I'm not sure exactly what happened. It was kind of like, is he eliminated? Is he eliminated? But yeah, he was eliminated. Daniel Garcia actually goes on to get the win, and he actually got all three eliminations himself. So very impressive showing there for Garcia, but Invictus Cash in this match for me was very much the standout. Definitely appears to be a very solid worker. I wouldn't mind seeing more of him. I may actually have to go out of my way to find some more footage of him because there was something about him in this match out of the other, between the other three competitors as well, with all due respect to them, that just, something about him just screamed out to me more than the others. Matt Taven would join commentary for the match between Moose and Mike Bennett. We had our very first technical foul in Terminus history in this match, with Moose launching Mike Bennett over the top rope, and this would actually further on with our first ever disqualification in Terminus after Moose for a second time would launch Mike Bennett over the top rope. We did have a nice competitive back and forth though in between those two technical fouls, which I really enjoyed. We had a solid match between Diamante and Janai Kai as well. Diamante picked up the win via submission. Jordan Grace defends the Impact Digital Media Championship here against Kiera Hogan, which I was looking forward to because we have two very talented wrestlers in Jordan Grace and Kiera Hogan. They kind of botched Jordan's ring introduction a little bit, which was kind of funny, but Jordan played it off very well. This was actually the most competitive match of the night at that point. Both competitors looking very strong. Brother, or I guess sister in this case. Nonetheless, Jordan's strength is always amazing to me, and they played up the power versus speed dynamic really well. It was very well done here. Jordan Grace would eventually go on to pick up the win, retaining her championship with an awesome transition into her pump handle driver finishing move. Baron Black had a pretty good promo heading into his match where he would actually be challenging Bandito for the modern version of the Ring of Honor World Championship. Of course, we do currently have dual champions at the moment, with Gresham holding the original iteration of the belt and Bandito holding the new one. Of course, what happened at Final Battle, which I have covered, that caused that. Bandito was unable to compete due to COVID reasons. So Gresham was crowned not really the interim champion, but the new champion with the original belt. So a little bit of old school versus new school there. I have only seen a little bit of Baron Black before this, but he is very impressive in my opinion. He really stood out again in this match, and I really enjoyed this match. Bandito did pick up the win, retaining his version of the Ring of Honor World Championship with just 54 seconds left on the clock. We had Dante Caballero and Joe Keys versus Hot Sauce Tracy Williams and the Savage Weight Fred Yehi in the very first tag team match to take place here in Terminus. The team of Dante Caballero and Joe Keys would pick up the victory. And then in the main event, we had a Pure Rules match with the Octopus Jonathan Gresham defending his original version of the Ring of Honor World Championship against the Walking Weapon, Josh Alexander, of course, Impact Wrestling star there. All the damn hype for this one. I've been so keen to finally sit down and, check this match out. We had a fantastic promo by Jonathan Gresham heading into this one, and Josh Alexander with a pretty solid one in his own right too. Very technical match, as expected. We had a ROH chant in there, but in the end, Gresham does retain the match after we end in a draw. We had a double pin. The fans were chanting for overtime, but on commentary they made a point of saying, hey, this wasn't a time limit draw. It was a double pin. It's, completely up to, management, and they've decided, no, this is how it's going to end. So that's a little bit weird that their very first main event ends in a draw, at least in that, double pin scenario. You would have expected, hey, let's kind of go like, a 90-second overtime, even though it wasn't a time limit draw. Like, I understand what they're saying, but I still feel like it should have been overtime, but you got to keep both guys looking strong, brother. And then to cap it off, Bandito comes out and confronts Jonathan Gresham, and they have actually since announced that at Ring of Honor's relaunch in April for Supercard of Honor, the main event will actually be to determine the ultimate Ring of Honor champion. They'll be unifying the championships. It is currently scheduled to be Bandito versus Jonathan Gresham, but both men are still defending their respective championships across various independent promotions, so it could always be a different combination of competitors when we do get the Supercard of Honor, but the two titles will be unified there regardless. As of now, myself and James Hellfire will actually be doing a review of that show when it does get to that point. Whether it's in person or over the phone does remain to be seen because, life, work, COVID, pandemic, etc., etc. But I am pretty keen to do that episode nonetheless. I'm very excited for that show. And regardless, just a very solid show here for the first show for Terminus. The show actually does end with Santana from AEW. Of course, Santana and Ortiz, proud and powerful members of the Inner Circle currently as I record this. But Santana comes out and he actually challenges Gresham to a singles match at the next Terminus show. So that should be an interesting dynamic there. Apparently they do have a lot of history with each other. But shifting gears to Warrior Wrestling. The highlights from Warrior Wrestling 18, again, just my opinion, are as follows. Straight off the bat, I absolutely loved the venue that they were in for this show. Of course, they are currently on tour, Warrior Wrestling. They've left the Chicago area, and they are going to spend as much as 2022 on the road as they can, pandemic permitting. And in terms of production, the venue that they were in, not only did it look just amazing from an aesthetic, point of view, it actually allowed them to have the best production that they have had for probably any show. Definitely the best one that I've covered on the pod, but I've gone back and I've watched a good bulk of them, and it's probably the best show production they've had ever. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that hopefully continue as they travel to some bigger venues throughout 2022. But we open the show with Silas Young versus Davey Bang, one half of the Bang Bros. Whatever you do, do not Google that, kids. And in saying that, kids should not be listening to this because it is marked E for explicit, but do not Google that. Do not Google that. Davey was actually a replacement here for Brian Pillman Jr., and to be honest, it probably did end up being a better matchup than what we would have originally got it. Of course, again, just my opinion. I'm pretty sure at one point Davey did actually take a legit knee to the jaw, and if not, he sold it freaking beautifully because I thought he was dead. Silas Young picks up the win, though, with a brilliant victory using the ropes for leverage. It's really weird seeing Silas Young outside of the Ring of Honor atmosphere, to be honest, but obviously Silas is probably going to be doing more independent, bookings in the future, so I do look forward to seeing him outside of that realm. It's weird to me because I've only really seen him ever in Ring of Honor. I haven't really watched him anywhere else. And obviously, he has worked other places, but just for me on a personal level, and it's just a weird little thing, it was just strange seeing him not in a Ring of Honor ring. The second match, though, the Lucha Scramble match, was absolutely great. We had a few little slip-ups, but I quickly became a fan of Drago Kid. They did say on commentary that he is actually related to Drago, but they didn't say exactly how, and when myself and Mrs. Crossfire looked into it, we couldn't find out, but apparently he does still, from what we gathered when we looked it up, there is actually some sort of relation there. There's not just a kayfabe thing from what it appears. We had one of the most craziest Tower of Doom spots that I've ever actually seen in this Lucha Scramble match as well. It was just freaking nuts. But in the end, we did crown a new Warrior Wrestling Lucha champion with Sam Adonis. He actually pinned the defending champion Aramis as well, so it'll be interesting to see where that one goes. We had a great hoss fight between Mil Muertes and Beastman. Mil Muertes picking up the win there. We got a super indie-refic match between Casey Navarro and Myron Reed, which I thoroughly enjoyed every second of. We kind of had, your generic finisher kick-out, which does make me go kind of, yeah, but both guys well and truly showed off their talent here. The fans were really into it. We had a "This is awesome" chant, and in the end, Casey Navarro did pick up the win. We had Rohit Raju versus Warhorse, which I was super keen for since they announced it. Very interesting, clash of characters there. It was a pretty solid match too. Had some subtle comedy at the beginning, mixed with some good action as the match progressed, and eventually Warhorse actually picked up the win via submission. We had Filthy Tom Lawler and Anthony Henry. They had a decent little slugfest, some good technical stuff as well. This match didn't really hook me, per se. Which is strange because I usually love, the technical style. I mean, I just covered, the highlights from Terminus, and I love Pure Rules, but just, I don't know, it didn't suck me in as much as other matches. But both guys 100% put in the work, nonetheless. Tom Lawler actually getting the win with a wrestling version of a technical knockout. Anthony Henry was unable to stand before a 10 count, despite being fully conscious. They kind of had a double down. Lawler made his way to the feet, and just as Anthony Henry was about to make his way to his feet, he kind of slipped. Referee counted to 10. I dig it. Sky Blue and Dante Martin were both super over in their entrance for their mixed tag team match against Kylie Ray and Isaias Velasquez, who were also fan favorites in their own right to begin with. We actually had a battle of two real-life couples in this one as well, and Isaias and Kylie actually worked very subtle heel during the match as it progressed, and that was great, especially with Kylie. She was still keeping up the whole Smiley Kylie stuff while doing it, which both me and Mrs. Crossfire popped really hard for. Sky Blue actually picked up the win for her team with a surprise crucifix pin on Kylie Ray. And then we went into the main event between Will Ospreay and Brian Cage, and I'm pretty sure the entire wrestling world was excited at this one on some level. I know for a fact I definitely was. All my close wrestling friends were. Mrs. Crossfire was. And of course, Will Ospreay won the Warrior Wrestling Championship at the last Warrior Wrestling show and was defending it against Cage here. And Cage was actually the very first ever Warrior Wrestling Champion. And there's actually a lot of speculation about Brian Cage right now because, of course, all the rumors are that his contract with AEW will apparently be coming up in March, so there's lots of intrigue as to where he's going to end up next. And this match was pretty much as expected as well. Both guys well and truly getting their shit in, brother. But I mean, of course, Brian Cage, one of his monikers is Mr. GMSI, Mr. Get My Shit In. We did get a Fight Forever chant in this one too, but in the end, Will Ospreay would retain the Warrior Wrestling Championship. What a freaking match. I 100% recommend any wrestling fan go out of their way to check this match out. Really good stuff. Dave Meltzer actually just gave it 4.5 stars. I'd say, why the fuck not, Dave? Push it, give it the 5 stars. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. Great show from top to bottom. I cannot wait for the next Warrior Wrestling show on February 12th or February 13th for those of us here in Australia. And as I said, Warrior Wrestling are currently on the road. They're going to be in this old little stadium, and it kind of has a really old school, Lucha Libre feel to it, just seeing the outside of the building. So I can't wait to see what it looks like on the inside. I can't wait to see what the atmosphere is going to be like. I'm just super, super keen. All the marking out, Warrior Wrestling quickly becoming a standout promotion on the independents, in my opinion. We'll shift gears again, and now we'll go over to the GCW show that took place live from the world-famous Hammerstein Ballroom. Of course, ECW had a lot of great moments there. Ring of Honor have had a lot of great moments there. But GCW The World, or The World on GCW as it was called, the kickoff show Battle Royal was super fun. It's an absolute clusterfuck, but GCW, known for the clusterfuck Battle Royals. In fact, on Joey Janela's Spring Break shows, they're actually called the clusterfuck Battle Royal. So there's that. But yeah, very fun battle royal. The kickoff scramble was really fun as well. Although I did, as a mark, get a little bit salty that Alex Zane wasn't the one that got the win there. The opening video package to the actual main show gave me some freaking insane goosebumps though, man. Like, Mrs. Crossfire, she's only familiar with probably about half of the GCW roster, but because this did emanate from the Hammerstein and it was such a big show, she sat down, she watched it with me as well, and even she was just like, holy fuck, like, this is massive, you know, for the world of, you know, independent professional wrestling. We kicked off the show with a brass ring ladder match, complete with a last-minute surprise in AJ Gray. AJ was actually meant to face Eddie Kingston, but Eddie Kingston has sustained an injury and he'll be out for like 3 weeks to a month. Hopefully by the time this episode goes out, he'll be close to returning. PCO in this match slipped on a package piledriver and he dropped Jordan Oliver on his head, on a ladder, for real. Jesus Christ, I was cringing so fucking hard. I really hope Jordan Oliver is okay. He did do a couple of little things after that towards the end of the match, did Oliver, so I'm assuming that means he's okay, but I was cringing. Nope. AJ Gray took a really bad spill off a ladder as well. He went to jump off it, the ladder fell, took a really nasty bump, but thankfully he recovered as eventually AJ Gray actually went on to win the match. It was a very indorific ladder match, but Mrs. Crossfire and I loved the hell out of every second of it. I did have a bit of a chuckle in the next match, though, when the ring announcer accidentally announced Flamita as Laredo Kid in the Trios tag match. Of course, they were actually opponents in that one. Flamita looked genuinely pissed as well, but in saying that, he is a heel, so maybe he was just working the gimmick, brother. Who knows? But this Trios match, this Lucha Trios match, of course, it was Team Bandito versus Team Gringo Loco, was just freaking awesome. It was insane. Possibly match of the night, to be honest. I actually started losing my voice in this one. Like, it's the second match on the main card, and I'm like, yes, holy shit. I don't know why, apparently I sound like an old man, but I started losing my voice in this one from just all of the crazy shit that these dudes were doing. The finish did look a bit awkward, but still a fantastic match nonetheless. Unfortunately, Jonathan Gresham had to be pulled from this show, but this meant that his match with Blake Christian actually became Blake Christian versus Leo Rush. Holy freaking shit, yes, these two have had some fantastic matches in the past. Have Blake Christian and Leo Rush. Ian Riccaboni was on commentary for this Blake Christian-Leo Rush match, since it was originally meant to be Christian versus Gresham for the Ring of Honor World Championship. It was a pretty good match here too. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Matt Cardona doing the Sandman's entrance popped the absolute shit out of me. From the first note of the song, I knew exactly what was happening, and I was just like, hell yes, I was laughing hysterically. This match here with Matt Cardona and Joey Janela was overbooked, but in all the right ways. Again, absolute clusterfuck, but it was just a great mix of action and comedy. I was in absolute stitches the entire time and just popping really hard at the same time. We had so many surprises in this one, but yeah, just freaking awesome match. Lots of great callbacks and references. Thoroughly enjoyed it. We had a promo by the one called Manders that led to Sabu and Bill Alfonso coming out and beating down Atticus Kogar and the rest of the crew, which popped the absolute hell out of me. The video package from Alley Catch leading into her match against Ruby Soho was really well done. The match itself was pretty solid too. A lot of people online said that it was meh. Both myself and Mrs. Crossfire enjoyed it though. Jeff Jarrett versus Effie is the one that both myself and Mrs. Crossfire thought were pretty meh, pretty It's just, didn't do anything for either of us, which is kind of sad because Effie is super fucking talented, but it is what it is. John Moxley versus Homicide was a nice slugfest. Thoroughly enjoyed that. And then the main event, the Briscoe Bros, they had an open challenge for the GCW Tag Team Championships in the main event. It was answered by Matt Tremont, which got a massive pop for me. And then Tremont's tag team partner was Nick Gage. I did feel, as over as he is with the live crowd, I felt Nick Gage was pretty anticlimactic, though, not gonna lie. The match was great, though. Like, it broke down pretty much instantly. It only went for about 8 minutes or so, which, in the grand scheme of things, was kind of like, because again, it added to the anticlimactic of it, because it was just like bang, 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 and it's over. But the action that we did get in that little bit of time, thoroughly enjoyed. But compared to the rest of the show, though, I do see why people say it's anticlimactic. Both me and Mrs. Crossfire were kind of like, oh, is that it? Because like it had been such a good show, and then it was just da-da-da, it's over. And we're like, yeah, oh. But yeah, very successful show all in all, I would say, for GCW. Owner of GCW, Brett Lauderdale, has since said that he's not happy actually with how the show went, which is interesting for a promoter to publicly say that. So maybe they'll go for a redo. Maybe they'll go back to the Hammerstein. Who knows? But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that show, but I just feel like very let down in the end, and I didn't need Jeff Jarrett versus Effie. Like, don't get me wrong, like, people have get shat all over Jeff Jarrett, for years now, because, he's booked himself on top and whatever else when he was in charge of TNA, but I actually appreciate Jeff Jarrett as a worker. He's had a really great, fairly big chunk of matches that I have thoroughly enjoyed throughout my years, especially, in TNA. But this Jeff Jarrett Effie match for me didn't do anything, and the main event, kind of anticlimactic, but overall, really good showing, in my opinion, for GCW here at the World on GCW inside the Hammerstein Ballroom. The match of the week this week, off the back of that super fun 6-man lucha tag team match on the GCW card, we have British Strong Style, Pete Dunne, Trent Seven, and Tyler Bate versus the Mexa Squad, Bandito, Flamita, and Ray Oris at Progress Wrestling Coast to Coast Tour Seattle, August 9th, 2018. This match can be found on a couple of different platforms. However, I watched it on the WWE Network as part of the deal that WWE does have with some of the European indie promotions. It is part of the Best of British Strong Style in Progress video compilation. There's actually some pretty good tag team matches on that whole list. But again, the match of the week this week is British Strong Style versus Mexa Squad at Progress Wrestling, August 9th, 2018. It's an absolutely great mix of action and comedy. And now I'll move into the main portion of this week's show. Of course, I'm doing a review or a recap-ish, as I like to say, of the latest Pro Wrestling Revolver show. I've actually gotten through this episode a lot quicker than I was expecting, so maybe I'll go watch some more wrestling after I finish recording this. Who knows? But we have Pro Wrestling Revolver Once Upon a Time in Iowa, or hashtag Once Upon Revolver. This took place on January 16th, 2022. A few matches on this show did have to be altered due to injuries, travel, and COVID issues, but as always, it's professional wrestling. They always say, card is subject to change. Match 1, straight off the bat, we had Speedball Mike Bailey, fresh off being signed by Impact Wrestling, and he's looking to take the US independence by storm now that he has a visa, and he is here in Wrestling Revolver. He has issued an open challenge, and that challenge was answered by AC Romero. This is obviously a quite obvious, David versus Goliath situation, as AC is one big bad dude, and AC's size and power proved to be very much an advantage for him in the early goings of this contest. I'm actually going to have to need to pick myself up one of those AC Romero shirts that he was wearing too, because it's big boy season indeed. Romero is, of course, very well known for taking risks, more common to guys that are the size of someone like his opponent here in Speedball Mike Bailey as well, though, so I do like the dynamic there. This did come back to haunt AC, though, as Speedball, much like his namesake, was too quick and managed to get out of the way of some high-flying offense attempted by Ace Romero, which allowed Speedball Mike Bailey to take control of the matchup. They traded some strikes and chops, which is, in theory, favours AC Romero, but Speedball Mike Bailey, to his credit, was able to hang in there with some of Ace Romero's shots. AC got a near fall off a big package pile driver, but after a massive powerbomb off the ropes, AC was climbing up to the ropes looking for possibly a Vader bomb or maybe even a moonsault, who knows. But Mike Bailey powerbombed Ace Romero off the ropes, picks up the win in the opening contest via pinfall. Match number 2, we had a triple threat match. It was Billy Starks versus Tootie Lynn versus Marsha Slamovic. Originally, this was meant to be Billy Starks and Marsha versus Jessica Havoc and Rosemary of the Decay from Impact Wrestling. And I hope that at some point we do still get that one, because I was actually really excited to see that one. But Tootie Lynn came out like a house of fire in this one, doing her best to make the most of the moment that she'd been given. This was a high-paced match from all three women, just throwing out everything that they could. Lots of intensity shown in this one. All women look strong, brother, sister. There was a couple of little mistimed things due to how fast they were moving, just trying to squeeze it all in. But I mean, that is just me being nitpicky. After all, it is, modern wrestling. It is really go, go, go these days. Eventually, Masha Slamovic picks up the win by pinning Billy Starks off a snap spike piledriver, which she calls the White Knight Driver. Great explosion of offense from all three women. Tootie Lynn actually got a nice standing ovation after the match as well, so good for her. Wasn't originally booked on the card, and then goes in there, has a banger of a match, go, whatever, but the fans were into it. They gave her a standing ovation after it. I don't think she could have asked for anything more than that. Match number 3, we had a tag team match. This was billed as a tag team attraction. We had Warhorse, my dude, and the young goat Myron Reed. What an absolutely odd pairing, but Warhorse is involved, so I'm going to say that it rules ass. Versus Eddie Edwards, one half of the Revolver Tag Team Champions, and Chris Sabin. This is a pairing that I can definitely get behind. Of course, you had Eddie Edwards, one half of the Wolves, Chris Sabin, one half of the Motor City Machine Guns, arguably two of the best tag teams of all time, at least within independent wrestling. We got a little bit of comedy at the very start. The ring announcer was trying to come up with clever names for both teams. Man Scout, who was on color commentary, had actually left at this point to get ready for his own match later in the night, and AC Romero comes back out, and now he's on commentary, so big boy season, baby! This tag match came about because it was originally meant to be Eddie and his partner Davey Richards defending the Revolver Tag Team Championships against Myron Reed and Trey Miguel, but due to possible close contact with COVID, Trey had to be pulled out, and Davey apparently has a broken foot or a broken toe or something to that effect. Chris Sabin and Warhorse were originally meant to be having a one-on-one contest, so they kind of just, naturally filled in the blanks here. We had some nice strike exchanges between Warhorse and Eddie Edwards before Myron Reed and Chris Sabin would square off. Myron Reed and Warhorse did take control with some double team offense, and they isolated Chris Sabin, but Sabin and Eddie Edwards managed to turn the tide and take advantage of Myron Reed. And as I just said, this is kind of like a dream team of sorts between Eddie Edwards and Chris Sabin. After hitting a double springboard stunner, Myron Reed gets the hot tag to Warhorse, who comes in and cleans house. All four guys in this match well and truly got their shine, got their shit in. Both teams actually showed a lot of fantastic teamwork and ring positioning. The fans were solidly behind the action here, and after a cradle shock from Chris Sabin, followed by the Boston Knee Party from Eddie Edwards, the team of Edwards and Sabin pick up the win by pinning Warhorse. All four guys hugged it out after the match, with the fans once again showing their appreciation for all the competitors and the action that they had just seen. Match number 4, we had a sudden death scramble. We had JJ Garrett versus Cole Radrick versus Crash Jackson versus Dan the Dad versus Jason Strife versus Cody Lang versus Marcus Mathers, that's Marcus, not Marshall, with a real Slim Shady, please stand up, versus Kevin Geezer. I wasn't actually as familiar with any of the last 4. Kevin Geezer's a guy that I've seen a little bit of, but not enough to be familiar with. But yeah, the other 3 I really had never really heard of before. So it was kind of fun for me to kind of, learn about them to an extent here. We started off hot and heavy. Everyone did flips and dives and whatever. JJ Garrett, as always, is super impressive. Jason Strife, they actually mentioned on commentary, apparently has been around. He's a 20-year veteran, so good for him. Dan the Dad, forever popping the shit out of me with his antics. AC Romero really won me over as a color commentator in this matchup. Crash Jackson had a fantastic display of power with an electric chair Samoan drop combo. I don't know how that makes sense, but it does. You need to go find this match and find him just doing crazy shit because it was awesome. Cole Radrick is a guy that I've really started to get behind on the indies of late as well, though. He's really good. Great to see him get some shine in this match. We had false finish galore, the usual get your shit in for this kind of scramble match, but in the end, Crash Jackson picks up the win with a huge pop-up powerbomb. Was an absolute thing of beauty. Big pop for me, but of course, I am a massive Kevin Owens / Kevin Steen fan as well, so Anytime someone does that move, I just instantly think of him. Match number 5, we had a no DQ Tornado Tag Team matchup. We had Infrared, Logan James, and Tyler Matrix versus Man Scout and one called Manders. Infrared, of course, representing JT Dunn's faction of The Unit. As I mentioned in the last Wrestling Revolver show, Infrared did impress both myself and Mrs. Crossfire with the little bit that we got to see of them, and that continued here. Man Scout and Manders jump-started the match by going straight at Infrared, and the weapons were introduced very early on by Infrared, who managed to take control of the match because of them. Manders and Tyler Matrix had some very creative use of a couple of steel chairs and trash cans in the interactions that they had, and then Man Scout would join in, taking out Logan James with a trash can of his own. Man Scout and Manders would build a bridge with 2 steel chairs and a steel guardrail, and Infrared responded by introducing a door, but they were shut down by Manders and Man Scout. Man Scout would disappear backstage and would return with a barbed wire board. It's no DQ. Shit just got real. Logan James would hit a standing Spanish fly onto Man Scout, sending him crashing into the barbed wire board, followed by putting Manders through the guardrail with a nice somersault plancha, and after a near fall, Infrared took Man Scout's wrestling tent hostage, which actually had myself and Mrs. Crossfire in absolute stitches. Of course, in the last Wrestling Revolver show that I covered, there was a little bit of antics from the wrestling tent, which popped me then, still pop me now. Absolutely brilliant stuff. After Manders puts Tyler Matrix through the door with a Death Valley driver, Man Scout picks up the win for his team by putting Logan James through the wrestling tent into the barbed wire board with an underhook superplex from the top rope. Man Scout has an absolute banger of a theme as well, and I'm pretty sure I've said that in the last Wrestling Revolver as well. I can't remember. Everyone in Wrestling Revolver just has really good theme music. During intermission, they did a replay of the last show where they had the 4 Corners of Pain death match between Alex Colon and Jake Chris. This was to set up, hype up the main event of this show, which they would be the scaffold and light tube death match between Alex Colon and Jake Chris, which I was super fucking keen for. But back from intermission, match number 6 was a singles match. It was Madman Fulton versus Ninja Mac. Man Scout will return to commentary here. I was kind of disappointed as I was actually loving AC Romero on commentary. This was meant to be Madman Fulton versus Caleb with a K, but Caleb with a K unable to make it, so he was replaced here by Ninja Mac. Again, much like the first match of the night, very obvious David versus Goliath situation. Mac had the speed, Fulton with the power, both men displaying those respective traits early on in the matchup. Mac was doing the obvious thing of trying to chop down the big man, but Fulton constantly swatted Mac away like a little gnat, like a fly, like a bug. But like an annoying bug, Mac just kept coming back for more. A big man, little man match, when done right, always hooks me, and these guys had me very early on. I was digging the hell out of it. Ninja Mac was working the hell out of a headlock, which I greatly appreciated, but it was Fulton finally hitting some high-flying offense of his own that then allowed him to use his power to take advantage, take control. Ninja Mac managed to get some good shots in there, but ultimately Madman Fulton would pick up a very dominant victory. Match number 7, we had a fatal 4-way match for the Wrestling Revolver Remix Championship. We had Alex Zane, the challenger, Andrew Everett, the challenger, Blake Christian, the challenger, versus Ace Austin, the champion, with Gia Miller in his corner. I absolutely love the dynamic here because the whole gimmick of this championship is that the champion gets to pick the stipulation of their defenses, and here we have a fatal 4-way which gets Ace Austin over as a fighting champion. This was very go from the beginning. I love that Andrew Everett is still doing the whole gimmick of being Andre the Giant's son. Of course, the joke here is that he's small. Everyone gets their chance to shine, much like the Scramble match earlier, and once again, everyone gets their shit in, brother. Andrew Everett was chokeslamming everyone, including a double chokeslam on Blake Christian and Alex Zane. Andrew Everett gets carried away, though, and tries to chokeslam the referee, but the referee chokeslams Andrew Everett to a massive pop from the crowd. We had all the choreography, flips and tricks in this one, but everything was done so smoothly that I was eating it up, as was the live crowd. Ace Austin goes to pick up the win to retain his Wrestling Revolver Remix Championship after pinning Andrew Everett after hitting the fold. Of course, that's Ace's running blockbuster finisher. We had an announcement that at the next show, which will be called Swerve's House, it will feature the return of Shane Swerve Strickland. Hell freaking yes. Whose house? Swerve's house. So fucking keen. Massive marks for Swerve. Match number 8 was a singles match, and it was billed as a horse fight. It was Jonah versus Brian Cage. Hell freaking yes. I was so keen for this one because I actually had the pleasure of seeing these two face off against each other at World Series Wrestling a few years back. And this was exactly as expected. Two big boys going at it, getting all this shit in, brother, smacking the crap out of each other, lots of solid hits, high impact powerful moves, including a superplex from Jonah and a deadlift superplex, almost a brainbuster, from Brian Cage. We had a few near falls and displays of athleticism as well, but eventually Brian Cage would get the win with his version of the F5, or the Effin' 5 as he calls it, because of course he is the effing machine. Jonah gets a standing ovation and chants of please come back. So glad to see Jonah still killing it on the US Indies. But match number 9 / the main event of the evening, we had a scaffold and light tubes death match. As I just mentioned before, we had Alex Colon, the Bloodfighter, versus Born to Die Jake Christ. And this is the third time both these guys have actually faced off at Wrestling Revolver, with each guy having one win apiece. So this was a rubber match with some major implications. Of course, the second match they had I did cover in the last Wrestling Revolver review. The first one I am yet to track down. Their first match took place in, I believe it was October 2019, may have been October 2020, but yeah, can't remember off the top of my head. But this is the third match in this series of different types of death matches. As they were setting up the structure for this match, they decided to kill time by playing the respective promos leading up to this from Jake Christ and then Alex Colon. And holy shit, both of these promos were just absolutely fantastic, especially the Alex Colon one. That was fucking lit. The commentary before the match popped the hell out of me because apparently they forgot to change the canvas. So the new one they just got, in theory, was about to be destroyed. The match quickly spilled to the outside when it did start though. Jake Christ took control early on and was actually the first one to use the light tubes, but Alex Colon managed to turn it around, and Colon actually poured shards of glass into Jake Christ's mouth. That made me cringe just a tad before Alex Colon just started hacking away at Jake Christ with broken shards of light tubes. Christ hit an awesome tilt-a-whirl gourd buster onto Colon, onto a chair, before busting an entire wad of light tubes over Colon's head, which got Christ a nice near fall. Both men were well and truly pouring blood by that point. Did not take long for the blood to flow in this match at all. And this is where they would climb the scaffold for the first time in this match, and Christ would hit a cutter off the scaffold, out of the ring, through a couple of doors that were set up on chairs. They then managed to get back in the ring, pull themselves up, have a nice little forearm exchange, and then there's something, as I've said this before, and there's just something satisfying, like as they're doing this, of hearing the sounds of all the clinking broken glass, just with all the movement, like hashtag deathmatch ASMR. Like, is that a thing? Like, I was talking about this in my conversation with High Octane, like there's just something really familiar. But yeah, I'm rambling, but yeah, just as they were going back and forth, you could hear the clinking, and I was just like, this is really satisfying. But they got back to the scaffold for a second time. They're on the top of the scaffold. They exchanged light tubes over each other's heads. Christ actually launched Colon off the top of the scaffold and then hit a huge crossbody for a near fall. Colon wheeled his way back in, and they had a bit of back and forth before Christ would hit a super smooth Death Valley driver. We got a "This is awesome" chant off of that. Colon would hit a huge moonsault belly-to-belly superplex or modified Spanish fly. Colon locked in the camel clutch, which is how he won their last encounter between the two. But this time, Christ gets out of it, which prompts a fight forever chant. We had more back and forth, and I honestly couldn't tell at this point who was going to win. There was just shit happening all over the place. But after a fucking massive Death Valley driver, this time from Alex Colon, off the top of the scaffold to Jake Christ, which Jake Chris somehow kicked out of. Alex Colon locked on the camel clutch for a second time in the matchup, and via referee stoppage, Alex Colon goes on to get the victory. There was a huge sign of respect shown between both guys after the match. But what a freaking way to end what was already a super solid card. Like, I talked about Warrior Wrestling, quickly becoming a big name in independent wrestling in the US. Warrior Wrestling, and especially with, Sami Callihan unfortunately being injured. I hope to see him back in the ring sooner or later, but with Sami being injured and being able to focus on these shows more, Wrestling Revolver in 2 shows have taken the US Indies by absolute storm, and I'm all here for it. So keen for their next show in April, but it's that time. I'm getting the go-home cue. I must bring this show to a close. So much freaking wrestling. I just covered 4 wrestling shows in just on an hour. But I hope all of you guys are staying safe, doing well mentally, and everything else in between, of course. You guys ever need someone to chat to? Your boy Crossfire's here. Shit happens. I'm going through shit. We're all going through shit. We're all going through shit together, especially in this pandemic. But the song of the week this week was I Miss the Misery by Halocene. Halocene. Again, I still don't know the fucking pronunciation. The match of the week this week was British Strong Style versus Mexa Squad at Progress Wrestling, August 9th, 2018. As always, please check the links in the description for all of my social medias, merch stores, and all upcoming events. I am the Essential John L. Crossfire, and you listening to this right goddamn now, we're just caught in conversation. Bye!